Shalom to you all, and this is our message for Parashat Ki-Tavo. Parashat Ki-Tavo is being read always after Parashat Ki-Tetse, and as it is said, the Creator always gives the remedy before the plague hits. So in Parashat Ki-Tetse, we were warned. In the beginning of the Zohar of Parashat Ki-Tetse, it speaks about bad-mouthing a woman. But the way it's written in the Torah is Betulat Israel, which is very suspicious because it doesn't speak about a virgin among the nation of Israel. It speaks about the Israel virgin, which is a hint, Betulat Israel, for the Shekhinah, the divine presence, the reality, the physical reality that the Creator dwells in. And that's our reality. And what it says over there is that when we criticize badmouth reality, we get hurt. We can't get anywhere positive. And we can see that. I think each one of us can look around and look about the difference between winners and losers. The first thing you can see among many, but this is very obvious. Losers are busy getting upset, aggravated, and they're very critical about other people's organizations, government, whatever, misconduct. Winners, they don't have time to get upset about it. They don't have time to criticize and to complain, because being a winner, it means that you look around, you see what is wrong. If you can make a profit out of it by fixing it, and other people, and bring benefit to others, you can make profit out of it. So that's not anything wrong. And if you can't do anything about it, don't waste your time by being busy with that, because time is money. And your concentration should be about something productive. So the winners, they don't badmouth anyone. They don't badmouth reality. They're always looking for opportunities. That being said, we can move right now, to Parashat Ki-Tavo, which is this weekly parasha. And this weekly parasha, what's amazing, it is a very perplexing parasha. It speaks about, on one hand, the blessings. If you do what it says in the Torah, and the amazing descriptions of the blessings that God is going to give you. But if you're not, oh, what terrible curses. The curses are so awful being described in this parasha that usually in most communities, the person who reads the Torah for the community in the synagogue, he does it with a low voice, because it's kind of, did God say these words? Even Moses? This is horrible. It's very uncomfortable for me to say it loud. And nobody wants that aliyah. So the person who reads it anyway, okay, you're already reading it, you're going to make that aliyah. So, but we learned not to get into a place of criticism and upset, because you can make a benefit out of it. So what do we do with it? So the Zohar deals with it with an amazing story. The Zohar is telling us a story that's in the Zohar Chadash, which is a part of the Zohar, that a manuscript that was revealed after the first batch of Zohars being revealed in the 13th century. And this Zohar speaks about the story that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son, Rabbi Elazar, they ran away from the Romans who wanted to kill them. That we are talking about the time of the second rebellion, Bar Kokhba rebellion, beginning of the 2nd century in Israel. And the results of that rebellion were horrible. The whole Jewish population of the south of Israel has been wiped. Many were killed, many were sold as slaves, and there were 8 more rebellions after that, but the future didn't look good. Fighting the small Jewish people, the Jewish people was not that small at the time, relatively to the Roman Empire, but fighting that huge, powerful, invincible empire looked impossible, and the Romans were very strict. They are going to colonize the land of Israel like they did to other lands. They're going to remove the Jews, the indigenous people, and they're going to replace them with people who are Romans. And that's what they did over centuries. Now, so the Zohar is telling us the story that the sages, the friends, the colleagues of Rabbi Shimon, they were in the academy, and they were talking about this parasha, about the curses. And they said those curses are basically prophecies about this long exile we just started. So again, not all the Jews were exiled immediately after the first rebellion, and not even after the second rebellion. There were still, for the next 800 years, there were enough Jews to rebel, and enough to be massacred by the Crusaders 1,000 years later. Okay, so, but still, it was a very grim future described in this parasha. And they said, where are the promises? How would that end? And they were in a bad mood for that. So one of them can't stand the fact they cannot have communication with Rabbi Shimon. He calls a dove. He writes the question on a note, gives it to the dove, sends a dove, and a dove finds Rabbi Shimon and gives him the note. And Rabbi Shimon's reaction is he cries. He said, my friends who are great sages, they cannot deal with that long exile and the persecution of the Jewish people around the world that was going to last for many, many, many centuries. What will the last generations that are not going to be that wise, how are they going to deal with such a grim situation? And he sits there and he cries, and suddenly Elijah the prophet, says the Zohar, comes to Rabbi Shimon and he says, look, the sins that were done during the Second Temple time by the Jewish people were terrible. And that's why, and they were in a very deep level, and therefore the end of that exile will never be revealed. And he leaves, and Rabbi Shimon continues to cry. And he cries, and suddenly Elijah the prophet comes again, says the Zohar, wakes him up and says, praiseworthy, Rabbi Shimon, God wants you to know the answer. And he reveals it to us, because he writes it in the Zohar. And he says, those curses, in the 53 verses of curses in this parasha, Parashat Ki-Tavo, those curses are really blessings, if you just know how to look at them. And he brings the worst of them all, which is written in the Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 61, which says, and also all plagues, all diseases that are not written in this Torah, God will bring it upon you till you're going to be exterminated. Terrible. You know, Israelis, when they curse, basically Israelis, when they're really upset, they don't curse in Hebrew. They use Arabic, Russian, English, other languages. Hebrew is too holy, too strong for that. But when when an Israeli is really like, it's beyond words, they quote, it's part of the way Israeli speaks. God, when you say about something, this is beyond any logic and any negative, you can't even imagine how terrible things can be. He's quoting this quote, Maka shelo ktuva b'Torah. This is a plague that is not written in the Torah. It's from the list of the stuff that is so bad that it's not even written here. So, what about that? It's a terrible verse, says Elijah the prophet. Read the verse again. And if you read it again, he says, look, the verb ya'alem can be read, will bring upon you. But it doesn't fit the verse. If it would be to bring upon you, it should be ya'aleh. But it says ya'alem. And ya'alem in Hebrew means will conceal. Which means Elijah the prophet is saying this is not a curse. This is the biggest blessing ever. Saying whatever will happen, whatever great nation and empire and religion will try to eliminate the Jewish people from the face of the earth, that will never happen, because God commits over here that He won't let it happen. Look, 2,000 years later, we're still here. So many nations, empires, religions, powers try to eliminate the Jewish people. We're still here, and they are part of history. Okay? In the garbage of history. In the garbage can of history. So this promise has been fulfilled to its full, context and understanding. Okay? And then it says something else also. It says, I'm going to give you another one. It says, this verse is a little bit later. That's in verse 68. It's chapter 29 in Deuteronomy. And God will bring you back in ships to Egypt as slaves. Factually, that's what happened. Egypt, Alexandria in Egypt, was New York of the Roman Empire. So most of the slaves taken from the wars in Israel were taken to be sold as slaves and in Alexandria, in Egypt. And the profit was made for the Roman government. Okay? So it happened. But Elijah says, no, you can read it differently. It says, the time will come in the end of days, and the Jewish people will return to Israel. And after all nations from all over the world will get together to condemn Israel, they will come, and he simply says there's a little bit different way you read the words, and it's a different meaning. Ba'oniyot could mean ships, but also means false accusations. The whole world will get together to condemn Israel with false accusations. Did we see that? Yes, we did. It's happening for a century already. Here's the whole world is getting together in the UN to condemn Israel as an apartheid state, as a colonialistic power. How can you condemn a nation that is an indigenous nation? And also, more than that, the people who do condemn, they also take the values of the Bible written in Israel by Jews, and they take it for themselves. This is the double colonialism. Not just that you take the land, you also take the culture, and you declare it as yours. And that the Jews, they just forge it. It's not really theirs. Okay? So that's the chutzpah that's beyond. But Elijah says that's what's going to happen. And more than that, most of the people in Israel will look around and say, how could we fight against the whole world and survive? This is impossible. And he says, Veitmakartem. It doesn't say Venimkartem. It doesn't say you will be sold. It says you will be given yourself away. Ve'en koneh. But nobody can take over you. Although many of the Israelis, says Elijah the prophet, will feel like they're lost. It's a lost case. There's no way. So Israel will continue to live for another 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. But against the whole world, it will cease to exist. And Elijah says, no, it's a promise. Nobody will ever be able to take control over Israel. And he says, and he continues, all of this will be in the end of the days. But it's all dependent on teshuvah, which means we'll have the people who will have a heart and will go back to connect to God, to connect to the positivity, to the light of God. They will be able to see how all of this, whatever is happening around us, is all the crazy stuff we see. So scary. Terrorism. This is a war of thought. It's all about remaining in a positive state of mind, not believing to the media, to the social networks, all the fake news that's running around, getting people afraid and upset. you connect to that, and you see that everything is for the good. For more details, because this is in very short, whoever wants to have the message for this parasha, look inside the information for this movie, and you'll have more recordings of longer and more elaborated lessons that you can get your mind enriched and your soul even more fulfilled, so we can overcome the negativity and really create ourselves an amazing, positive new year, because it's all about retaining and creating a positive state of mind, that's what the war is about. Thank you so much. Shavua Tov.